Sometimes depending on if you're into yoga, different studios, have mirrors everywhere around you. And it can be intimidating if the person next to you is, this really expert person in this cute little, Lululemon outfit. And you're kind of comparing yourself to others or checking
Hmm.
yourself out in the mirror. And when we're out on the water, you got to let all that go. You got to be okay with falling in, and you just are able to be in the moment and enjoy it in a different sense than sometimes in a studio, I feel like.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kelsey, from Yoga Floats in Oahu, Hawaii.
Yes.
I'm super excited to have you on board and talk to you because you're offering so many unique things, not just human powered adventures, but you're helping rejuvenate the body and the mind with paddleboard yoga. And I'm really excited to have you on. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell me a little bit about what started your journey and how you got started with SUP Yoga to begin with, and then starting the business.
Yeah. I mean, it might be kind of a funny story. I'm actually from Canada. I originally grew up in Saskatchewan, which is a landlocked in the middle of the country, thousands of miles from the ocean. But I was always fascinated by the ocean and surfing culture, and I love the water. So eventually, I ended up in Hawaii in my 20s, and I started my first career was teaching, elementary school teaching. Um, so I'm a teacher at heart, and I love it. But as we all know, teaching comes with its fair share of frustrations and burnout, and so I was living here working as a teacher, but just not really happy with the way things were going. Because the goal of living in Hawaii was to connect with nature, to be outside, to enjoy the ocean. And everyone thinks living in Hawaii is amazing, but it's also the reality is you wake up, you go to work, you come home, you go to bed, you do it again the next day. You can get in that routine really easily. So I was just ready for a change, and I was frustrated with work. And I actually went to do you know Wanderlust yoga festivals?
I
They
don't.
it's
I don't.
in the past, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, they've been popping up all over the US and Canada, other places in the world. And it's basically like a 4-day yoga festival. And they
Okay.
get
Is there
big name
music
yoga.
as well?
Yeah, there's music,
Okay.
yoga instructors, speakers. They're really cool events. And they were hosting one here on the North Shore of Oahu.
Okay.
And it was just a few minutes from my house. So I, bought they're kind of expensive tickets. I bought a ticket and did a day of this, all these yoga classes. And stand-up paddle yoga was kind of a new thing. This was, I don't know, maybe like 8 years ago or something like that, 7 or 8 years ago. Um, and I was like, I love paddling. I love yoga. I love being on the water. I want to do this stand-up paddle yoga class. And I was actually too cheap to buy the ticket for it because it was an extra charge to do the stand-up paddle. So I
Sure.
didn't do it. And a year went by, and then the festival returned the next year. And I was like, you know what? I've been thinking about that stand-up paddle yoga class for a year. This is obviously something I'm interested in. I should really just pay the $40 or whatever it was to do the class. And I did the class, and yeah, our yoga class is in Shavasana, and we're laying there in the sun on this most perfect day. And I was like, I want to feel like this every day. I want to do this every
Uh,
day. And I had this epiphany where I was like, I can. I can do this every
yeah.
day. I can make this change. And so I kind of had that moment of clarity, and it was pretty close to exactly 2 years later when I opened my business doing stand-up paddle yoga. So
That's
that was sort of,
amazing.
yeah, that was what brought me to it and kind of inspired me to do that.
So
Um,
great that you remember that specific moment where that light bulb
yeah.
went off in the form of sunshine.
Oh yeah, always. Yeah, and it's for myself, it's such a perfect combination because, like I said, I love teaching. So teaching stand-up paddle yoga is still what I like to do, and then it brings in the elements of being outside and like you touched on earlier, just sharing the joy of nature with other people, and exposing them to it, or reminding them to appreciate it, and giving them those tools. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
I bet.
There's
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah.
so you're laying there on the paddleboard. You're like, I want to do this. And then it takes a couple of years to get the business launched. And what are some of the things in between that you had to go through? I'm sure there were some certifications involved, buying
Yes.
paddleboards.
Yep.
What that look like for you?
Yeah, well, I moved to Shanghai because my visa was expiring in the US. I moved to Shanghai, and really didn't like that. The city life wasn't for me. And then moved back to Canada, moved in with my folks while I started the business. My dad was an entrepreneur as well, so he was really helpful in terms of, you know, where to start with the permits. There's all the little details of starting a
Yeah,
business. I'd never been a business
right.
owner, so I did most of that. Interestingly enough, trying to figure out these Hawaii permits and things from Canada, figuring it all out online. And I did get a few certifications. So stand up paddleboarding certifications. I went through a few different organizations. I did Paddle Canada, which was great. The American Canoe Association. I really enjoyed their program. And then also World Paddle Association. There's a company based out of California called Paddle into Fitness, and
Oh,
they
cool.
have a stand-up paddle like yoga certification course. So I did
Awesome.
that course. I ended up getting certified as a trainer to do that course as well. I offer that sometimes. Um, and then, of course, your yoga certification, that's a 200-hour course. So you just start with the basic 200-hour. You can go on from there. They have 500-hour courses as well, but the
Hmm.
basic yoga certification is 200 hours. And then the stand-up paddle certification is sort of an add-on to that. And it's just a couple-day course.
Got it.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot involved. I was thinking about that. You're not just doing, paddleboard rentals. You're doing paddleboard and yoga, and there's, even more things to consider
Some
when you're
elements.
taking people out. That's really cool. So for those that don't know much about uh, paddleboard yoga, or paddleboarding in general, is enough balance involved? Like, how tough is it for someone that is into yoga already and wants to maybe try it on a paddleboard, or vice versa, is into paddleboarding and wants to try some yoga moves while they're out there? So me included, I would love to know,
Yeah.
what is the barrier of entry? Is this for beginners? If you're out there taking a trip to Hawaii, do you just, jump in and try it? Or what does that journey look like?
So we definitely we say that our classes are open for all levels, but we're especially catering towards beginners because I would say 90% of our customers are tourists, visitors to the island, who a lot of them have never been on a paddleboard before. A lot of people are interested in yoga, but we also get many people who have never even done a yoga class before. And I always love those people. I'm like, you've never done yoga, you've never been on a board, and you're showing up today. I love it.
Yeah.
So open for all levels, no experience necessary. And then sometimes, we get someone who's been practicing yoga for 20 years and they come out and they're interested in something new and a challenge. So we do our best to give lots of options within the framework of the class. So, as we move through a pose or a sequence of poses, oftentimes it's quite easy to say, okay, if you want to make things a little bit easier on yourself, drop a knee down, bring your hand down on the board for more stability. For those of you who want a little bit of a challenge, try this, try lifting up your hand or your foot, or, whatever modification it is. So generally within one class, we're able to cater to all the different ability levels. But we really try to let people know that you don't need any experience and you don't need to be intimidated. Oftentimes people are a little nervous, a little timid at the beginning of the class, and they're like, I've never done this before. And I'm like, don't worry, nobody's done this before. So you're in the
Yeah.
right spot. And a couple of tricks that really help to make it accessible is we have really big, wide, stable boards. So they're they're a regular paddleboard, but just one of the biggest sizes available.
Sure.
So
Okay.
that makes it easier for us to be doing yoga poses on it versus some people say, I have my own board. Can I bring it? And I'm like, it's probably not the best idea because ours is going to be a lot easier for you to do it on
Sure.
unless you're looking for that challenge. The other thing we do is we found like a nice calm sort of cove area where the water stays relatively flat. We don't get any waves. Obviously, the ocean and weather conditions are different every day. But for the most part, it's nice, calm, flat, sheltered water. So that's the other thing that's really helpful for our practice. And then we use anchors. So we have small little mushroom anchors that each person has their own anchor. And we attach it to the board. We actually don't go deep at our particular location, which is also helpful for people who show up who might not be a strong swimmer. So we're only about waist deep. So we don't have to worry about wearing life jackets or anything like that. Um,
That's
and so
super
the
cool.
anchors ensure that we're not going to drift away with the wind throughout the
Got it.
class. Yeah,
And
so those
the
things really help make it easy for beginners.
and
Yeah.
the paddleboarding component of the yoga is essentially you're adding an extra layer of balance that is to your yoga practice that isn't
Yeah,
there. Um,
absolutely. The
and I imagine
ground
the
below you is moving.
yeah.
So you're constantly adjusting to that movement with your balance and stability. And so you start to find these muscles that we don't normally engage in our yoga practice. So it adds the element of challenging your balance and, working on the core and things like that. But I feel like it also just kind of gets you out of your own head. Sometimes depending on if you're into yoga, different studios, have mirrors everywhere around you, and it can be intimidating if the person next to you is this really expert person in this cute little Lululemon outfit, and you're kind of comparing yourself to others or checking
Mhm.
yourself out in the mirror. And when we're out on the water, you got to let all that go. You got to be okay with falling in, and you just are able to be in the moment and enjoy it in a different sense than sometimes in a studio, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, any of those added elements of nature, um, anything that can help you be more present is kind of getting to the core of yoga anyway,
Absolutely.
for your
And
practice.
it's a nice easy way to bring that into the meditation of the yoga is, listening to the waves and the birds chirping or the wind and feeling the sunshine. We even have nighttime classes that are really cool. And oftentimes, I've seen some shooting stars in the class or the full moon
Wow,
that's rising. So just this opportunity to connect with nature and kind of tie that into your yoga practice is really cool.
super cool. Well, you've got me sold. You have a customer of one already,
Awesome.
already ready to try it. And I'm a very, very beginner at, you know, yoga. You can't even say I actually do it. I just stretch sometimes, and my wife tells me some
Yeah.
poses to get into that are really going to help me. So I'm super excited to try this. And
Yeah.
outdoors, especially, is something that always more interested in doing things outdoors.
Mhm.
So
Sure.
it's a great way to try something, even if you're already doing it, which is yoga practice. Try it outdoors. Um, what are some like other things that people um, should know about like paddleboard yoga, what to wear if they're thinking about, are they just going to show up if they're on their vacation? What do they need to bring versus what you guys provide um, in a typical lesson?
We basically say, you don't really need to bring anything, maybe a towel and a change of clothes. And we provide all the equipment, everything that you'd need. So some people like to wear bathing suits, and some people feel a little more comfortable in sort of like workout or yoga gear, or some combination of the two. Any type of that lycra workout clothing is pretty easy to get wet. Obviously, like something like denim shorts is not a good idea to to try and stretch and move in, and if it gets wet it's super heavy. So yeah, so people kind of wear what they're comfortable with. Sometimes, depending on the season and the day, you have to think about sun exposure, so I always wear long sleeves and long pants. um, but Yeah, and then they don't need to bring anything else. We have a nice big van where people are welcome to store their extra clothes and towels and bags and stuff.
Awesome. So easy peasy. You're out there in Hawaii
Yeah.
and you want to try this. Just there's not a lot of barriers keeping you from getting out there. That's cool.
Absolutely. The other thing that we do provide are photos free of charge as well. So people are
Okay.
pretty to have a keepsake of that. And then you don't have to worry about bringing your phone and getting it wet and all of that stuff.
That's huge. Yeah. And just being away from your phone in general, which is great.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put it away.
So you must enjoy living there more than Shanghai. Uh,
Yes, definitely.
so what are some things that you like about living in Hawaii that you enjoy as a local? And then second part of the question is, what are some things to do in Oahu that you enjoy doing as a local that maybe other people should consider? And it helps if there are outdoor things to do and some human powered things.
Okay. Um, I love living in Hawaii. It is very amazing. I mean, of course, there's some pros and cons to it. It does have a high cost of living, and things like that. But it is my favorite thing about living in Hawaii is I'm literally never bored. I remember a large part of my childhood just being like, what can I do today? There's nothing to do. And here, I mean, it just never ends. It's like a giant playground. So we have all any ocean activity you could imagine. We have pretty much all of it here. And no matter what you're into, there's obviously amazing surfing, stand-up paddling, good snorkeling and swimming or cliff jumping or sailing or whatever water sport they have. I've heard from other visitors that there's these underwater scooters that are cool. I've never tried them.
Yeah, they can
But
like pull you around.
yeah, something like that. So there's all sorts of things that you can do on the water. And then if we also have the mountains, which is so amazing, really amazing
Yeah.
hike, and camping and things like that to do. So, we have a really amazing circle of friends because it's like you said, other outdoor enthusiasts and like-minded people who are always doing fun stuff. So, you just you can't ever get bored here, and it's really wonderful. Even sometimes, just get a hammock and a book and find a little park and under two palm trees and relax that way.
Give
It's
your
pretty
body a
amazing.
break.
Yeah, yeah, that's good too.
Yeah. And then times of year, are there times of year that are better to visit than others
Yeah, the nice thing about
in terms
Hawaii
of
as
season or
well
weather?
is the seasonal temperature change is very small. So our coolest day in the winter is it's still only in the 70s, and then the
Hmm.
hottest day in the summer is in the 90s. But we usually have a nice trade wind breeze, so it's not often like unbearably hot like other places in the south and southern US. We do have sort of more of a rainy season, a cooler rainy season, and then the summer instead of winter and summer. Um,
Okay.
Basically, we've had a cool rainy spring right now. The past month has been kind of cold and rainy. Summertime in terms like May, June, July, August, September, it's basically like postcard worthy weather every single day, blue skies and sunshine.
Wow.
But during the winter months, you can hit a rainy week or two, which is always a little bit of a bummer if that's your 2-week trip and you hit 2 weeks
Yeah.
of rain. So the winter time is nice, obviously, because it's cold. Other places on the mainland, it's a great
Sure.
getaway. That's whale watching season here as well, which is really cool. Um,
Okay.
but but I would say probably like May to October is generally going to be really nice weather.
Got it. And then
Yeah.
most people, when you're traveling to Hawaii, are you visiting just one island? And then are you trying to see as much of that island as possible? Or are you hopping? I suppose you could do it any way you can, but what's your
Right.
recommendation if you only had maybe 2 weeks? Would you try to explore
Two
one
weeks, I
island
think
as
would
much as
be.
possible?
I think 2 weeks would be enough time to see two islands comfortably.
Okay.
Like for example, Oahu, you can drive anywhere on the island in an hour.
Okay.
So it's accessible. It's not super big. And there you could obviously easily spend 2 weeks in one location and find lots to do. But each island is actually fairly different from the other. Have you been to Hawaii?
Not yet. That's why I'm so,
Oh, you
so
have to
curious.
come. You have to come.
Can't wait.
So Kauai is called the Garden Isle, and it's really green and lush and not super populated. And so it has definitely a lot of hikes and outdoor things and these quaint, cute little towns. So that's more like country style, and Maui as well, in a sense. And then the Big Island, the island of Hawaii, is like very raw. The volcanoes are still erupting there, so there's a lot of like volcanic rock everywhere. It's much bigger. We tried to do the whole island in a weekend, which was a mistake. We just spent the whole time driving. So
Sure.
usually you can kind of explore one coast or the other, or if you had a week, that would be plenty of time to explore. But they have cool ranch lands and horseback riding and things like that happening on the Big Island. And then Molokai and Lanai are teeny tiny islands. They don't get very many visitors. They're pretty sleepy towns or little islands. And then Oahu is the hub. Honolulu is a population of about 1 million. So you have the city life, and the events and shopping and Waikiki, the types of things that people might like in terms of like bigger city conveniences. But we also have lots of really great, like country areas and things to explore. Oahu has a lot of tourism, and so a lot of tours and things set up, but it's nice
Got
to
it.
explore other islands too. Yeah, probably 1 week on an island would be not too rushed.
That's great to know. And I like that you mentioned, don't just spend all of your time just driving around and
Right, exactly.
try to
Try to see
explore a little bit
everything.
more. Yeah. Because
Yeah,
it's easy to just want to see everything, right? As much as possible.
right.
Because you're like, I don't know if I'll get a chance to come back or when
But
I
then
come
you
back.
end up
But
seeing it all through the car window.
yeah, right. And
Yeah,
it's just nice to have a comeback list sometimes. If you're,
absolutely.
instead of trying to hit everything, just make a list of the things you want to come back to.
Totally.
At least that's what I try to remind myself, because when we're traveling around the RV, that happens to us every single place we go, right? Like
Yeah,
we go, we're working and exploring, and then it just makes us want to continue to just stay in that location longer and longer, because we're never going to see it all. And
you're starting
the
to
longer you stay, the more recommendations you get from the locals. The list
totally.
just keeps growing. So um, yeah, the comeback list, it's a good thing to have.
Nice.
So what are some of the things that you love about having an outdoor business? I know you talked about being burnt out in teaching, but how do you like being in the outdoor industry? Do you recommend, I feel like outdoor industry is booming right now. It's a great place to be. People are appreciating the value of being outdoors, but what are some things that are maybe challenging, or uh, is it any different than owning any other business?
Yeah, well, this is the only business I've ever owned, but it does come with obviously a unique set of challenges. Um, I mean, one of the pros and cons, and I mentioned it before, is there's no 2 days the same. The ocean is different every single day, and it's also really cool. I've been teaching consistently, 5, 6 days a week. Really starting to understand this one area and understanding the weather patterns and which direction the wind is moving and the tidal changes, and just really getting connected with one place is really cool.
Yeah,
So, every day something different might show up, and different ocean conditions. And so people who come back are like, oh, it's way more difficult today than it was last time. And I'm like, yep, we've got a little more wind today, or whatever the conditions may be. Um, and with that, comes the frustrations of owning an outdoor business. Just 2 weeks ago, there was the earthquake in New Zealand, and then the Pacific tsunami warning system. There was a tsunami watch, I think, was what it was classified as, and they were just watching to see if it was going to be a threat to Hawaii. So I canceled all the classes, and then an hour later they said, okay, no threat to Hawaii, we're good. So I called everybody back and I said, okay, wait, we can do the class tonight because the tsunami watch has been canceled. And then, and then the next week we've had a rainy week, which is tough because we've really seen sort of a resurgence of visitors to the island, since last year. More vaccinations, and more people are ready to travel. So we've been getting really full classes, which is awesome. And then I've been canceling them due to rain right now, which is a little frustrating, but the sun's shining today at least. So that's, some of the unique challenges of owning an outdoor business.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Because yeah, given that it's an outdoor business, you're not controlling all the other elements um, that a typical
Exactly.
business or a typical studio can maybe control indoors, right? Like they can always get that safe, quiet environment or with music.
Right. Turn
Yeah,
the temperature up or turn the temperature down. And yeah, we're
right.
just in the elements. Hmm.
That's cool. So you touched on my next question, which was going to be, what is the state of Hawaii tourism right now? What's required for anyone that's planning a trip to come visit? Um, and yeah, how's tourism doing now for you?
Yeah, I've definitely seen an increase in the past like 2 months, I would say. So the nice thing about Hawaii is we're isolated. So we haven't seen some of the surges of COVID that the mainland was seeing. And so the rules are constantly fluctuating a little bit, but as of right now, any visitor needs to take a COVID test. I think it's 72 hours before they get on their flight to Hawaii. And then once they have a negative result, and they land in Hawaii, then they share those negative results with the authorities, and then they're good to go. If you don't have the negative result in hand, then I believe you need to do a 14-day quarantine at your hotel, and which is not very many people now, because obviously they're if you don't get your test results in time, I think you can just reschedule your flights so that you don't have to do 14 days in quarantine. So then there's this, nice sense of knowing that all the people who have come, at least before their flight, all tested negative for COVID. And it's nice too, in terms of our business, we're, like you said, we're outdoors. So you're breathing fresh air. We're not in a confined space. We're on the water, and we're spread out. So those are some nice things about the COVID, um, you know, safety measures that we can take. But yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of people from the mainland US, and some from Canada. We typically had a lot of visitors coming from Japan and Korea. They haven't started traveling back as much yet, but I think we're on the way.
Yeah, I think we'll hopefully rounding the corner on this thing and,
So
great things
yeah.
to come ahead. What were some of your moments of like I'm sure, I guess I'm trying to say, with no tourism in Hawaii, it had to be a very different experience of living there
Yes.
over the last
Oh,
year. What were
there was
some of
one
those
day.
changes that you noticed or
Well,
going to
it was
miss?
pretty cool. We went down to, I mean, Waikiki Beach is the stereotypical, it has all the hotel chains and all the shopping and all the restaurants, and it's buzzing 365 days of the year, usually. And so during COVID, we went down, we rode our bikes all along the beach, and Waikiki Beach was empty, which I don't think anyone will see again in their lifetime. It
Wow.
was cool to
Yeah.
see these empty beaches, and enjoying some of the places where that are usually like there's a lot of tourists. We were kind of able to go enjoy as locals without the big crowds. But yeah, it was quiet. I felt so fortunate to live here, especially like, for example, when New York was hit hard, and that people are living in teeny tiny apartments that they don't normally spend much time in because they're usually out in the city, and they were just stuck in there going crazy. And in the meantime, here we were, for a lot of the year, we were able to hike, we were able to be in the ocean and be on the beach. So just another great reason to live in Hawaii for sure.
Yeah. It's worth the years of the high price of living to
Yes,
be able
you do
to
pay a
get
price for this.
outdoors. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything has a both sides, but I'm really grateful for the outdoors as well during the pandemic in general. To be able to just spend as much time outdoors and not be stuck in a city is really priceless.
And I think that's what helped a lot of people make it through some of those long quarantine times, is just kind of clearing your head and being outside and reconnecting with nature. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey of starting yoga floats. And
Oh,
I feel very inspired to come out and not just to Hawaii, but to come out to take a paddleboard yoga class with you.
oh yeah, we'd love
And
to
I
have you.
can't wait. And if there's anything that you wanted to, where can people find you? Obviously on tripoutside.com, you can find them under yoga floats in Oahu when you search for the destination. But if you'd like to share your social media so people can feel inspired to come out.
Sure. Our website is yogafloats.com, and that has the schedule and the class descriptions and everything and the sign up. And we're on Instagram and as Yoga Floats, and Facebook Yoga Floats Hawaii. So yeah, we love to share photos of all the experiences of the people coming, and would totally love to have you join us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Kelsey. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.